Hi everyone and welcome back. In today's video I'm going to be working on some mixed media cards. Most of the supplies I'm going to be using today were sent to me by the InLoveArt shop. They're an online shop supplying lots of scrapbooking, mixed media and card making supplies. They have pattern papers, stamps, stickers, dies for die cutting machines, lace paper cutouts and lots more. Everything is very affordable and they also have free worldwide shipping. This is not a sponsored video, but they were kind enough to send me along a variety of supplies to use, and I'm always happy to try out a new brand and see what I can make. And as they ship worldwide, I thought it might be of interest to you all as well. There are links to all the products that I used today in the description box below and a link to the InLoveArt shop as well. They've also provided a coupon code for you all, so you can find everything in the description box. So let's get started and make some cards. I have here 3 6x6 inch Kraft coloured card bases. As lots of the graphics I'm going to be using today have a vintage theme to them, I thought that the Kraft would complement that nicely. As always, when I start a card, I like to look through the papers I'm working with and select a couple to use. One for a matting layer and then the other to use as the background panel. With this first card, I decided to create a spot for the focal point in the left-hand corner, and so I tore off a corner of this piece of pattern paper. The rough edges of the paper will add texture to the card and also help the piece to stand out against the background. I attached that to the card with some 3D foam squares, as I also wanted to be able to arrange elements behind it. Next, I looked through the set of vintage transparent stickers. There were lots of lovely designs to use, and as they were transparent, they're really useful for adding to backgrounds and for layering. However, in this case, for the cards today, I decided that I wanted the elements to stand out a bit more. So I attached everything down to a white piece of cardstock and then simply cut them out. This will help the stickers to stand out a bit more when I add them to the cards later on. I then stamped out a few of the flowers and leaves from the Flowers and Leaves stamp set. I used black ink and stamped an entire page of elements and then cut them up to use on the cards. I'm going to leave these black and white today so that they will complement and contrast the vintage feel of the cards. Next, I started to assemble the card, starting first with gluing down 2 of the lace paper cutouts onto the background. I really loved these lace cutouts, they were very fine and the paper had a textured surface. I also really liked the variety of leaves and butterflies that the 2 sets that I had came with. They are definitely one of my favourite supplies that I used today. I continued to build up the background cluster, tucking all the elements behind the corner panel. I'm using liquid glue here as it gives me a moment to move things around before they dry, and I find that when I'm constructing a collage like this, it's really useful to be able to move things about a bit and adjust as you go. I then took 2 strips of paper that I had left over when I trimmed down the background papers earlier on, and I glued those to the corner panel to be the base for the little cluster of elements I'm going to put on the corner panel. Next, I stamped out a sentiment for the card using the large alphabet stamp set. I like these because they're designed to be imperfect and to have a slightly textured and uneven appearance, and because of that they work really well with mixed media. They could be used for sentiments like I'm using them today, but they could also be used in a background or in a pattern. They're a really useful stamp set and I really like the textured look of them. So I stamped out 3 sentiments for all the cards that I'm going to be making today. I then went back to the card and added in the arrow and the postcard graphic to the corner panel, and then the sentiment cut into a banner. The last few things to add here are a couple of buttons and a few flower stamens. And that is the first card completed. I liked the layered look of this design and the corner panel layout. for card number 2, as always, I started with the papers. And for this card, I wanted to create layered strips, and I really wanted the papers to be the main star of this card design. I'm not going to cover too much of the paper later on when I add my focal clusters to the card, so I wanted to build in some texture and layers at this stage. I started with a pale blue matting layer and then took 3 sheets of paper and tore them into strips of varying thicknesses, and then layered them up. I used 3D foam squares on the second and third layers to give the background an extra dimension in between the panels of pattern paper. I also used the leftover strips and glued them down as well. I made sure that the 2 outer edges of the card were cut paper strips instead of torn, just so that the edges of the card looked really nice and neat, and then you can have the texture of the torn paper layering up in between. Next, I glued down a little of the lace ribbon. This particular lace was really nice because it had a sticky side to the ribbon. It was a little bit like a ribbon tape, so it was really easy to attach to the card. I then added one of those lovely flower cutouts and then started to build up a little focal cluster with a rectangle of leftover paper as the base, then adding some of the leaves I stamped out earlier, one of the vintage stickers, and then the sentiment banner. Having lots of elements pre-stamped and cut can make assembling multiple cards quite a quick process. I then decided that I needed a couple more elements to complete this cluster, so I took one of the little stamps from the background shapes stamp set and stamped that out a few times onto a scrap piece of paper. I cut them up and then added them into the cluster, and I really liked the addition of those little elements. Next, I added 3 Nuvo drops in yellow, and then the card was complete. I think this layout really helps the background papers to shine, and also at the same time has a nice little focal cluster as well. For the last card today, I started with 2 pages of pattern paper, trimmed them down and attached them to the card base using double-sided tape. Then I cut a large banner out of another sheet of pattern paper and attached that to the card using 3D foam squares to lift it off the background a bit. My focal point for this card was one of the lace butterflies, but I thought that the butterfly was not standing out enough from the background, so I decided to change the colour. I used my stamping ink pad and just carefully brushed it across the butterfly. Having the cutouts in white is great because it's really easy to change the colour to whatever you need and to add ink or paint or whatever you like to the cutouts and change the colours to best suit your project. I also like that the ink skipped over the texture of the paper so that the final butterfly had this speckled look. I then created the focal cluster on the card, starting first with a small rectangle of scrap paper as the base, then added the sentiment and then the butterfly. I used liquid glue to attach the body of the butterfly and then cut up a couple of the 3D foam squares into little pieces to secure the wings. The final step was to add a few buttons and a couple of flower stamens. And I went with black for both of those so that the butterflies and the text would look cohesive and make black one of the main colours of this card. And those are the finished cards. I love the collaged look they have and I enjoyed working with the graphics. The vintage feel is not something I normally go for, but it's always fun to try different styles, and the different products all worked really nicely together here. I have plenty of these supplies left over, so I will be making another project coming up soon with these goodies. I think probably a mixed media canvas. Thank you to the InLoveArt team for sending me these supplies today, and don't forget to check out the coupon code that's in the video description if you're interested in any of the products that I've used in the tutorial today. Let me know in the comments down below which card was your favourite, and I really hope you enjoyed the tutorial. Thank you for watching and have a creative day.